It's Mike Visconti and Will Kingkade. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, yes.
All right, and we'd also like to acknowledge our Milford TV sponsors. Our gold sponsor is Cornerstone at Milford. You can find them at 11 Birch Street here in Milford. And our bronze sponsor is WDA Cleaning and WDA Landscaping. They have two websites you can check out. They are WDAlandscaping.com and WDAcleaning.com. The idea for tonight's debate was to use the resources we have here at Milford TV to help educate the Milford voting public ahead of this very important local election coming up on April 7th. We've brought together 3 of our Milford TV members who each bring with them a wealth of knowledge on local politics. They will be serving as our panel of questioners for tonight's debate. I'd like to introduce each of them to you now. First, we have John Tian. You can check out John's show, All Politics is Local, here on Milford TV. John, tell us a little bit about your show here.
Well, my show, Tim, is produced by our Political Action Committee, the Greater Blackstone Valley Democrats. I'm happy to produce it. It's been a whole lot of fun. I've got about 32, 33 episodes in the can already. And I've had a variety of people on my show, everyone from governor's candidates, lieutenant governor candidates. Suzanne Bump, the state auditor, was on my show, right down to the current selectman candidates that we have right here. I've done a couple of episodes on casino-free Milford. I've done quite a bit of local politics as well as even things of national interest. So the show airs 4 times a week here on Milford TV, Sundays at 3:30, Tuesdays at 11 a.m., Wednesdays at 7 p.m. and Friday at 9:30 a.m. So thanks for having me on the panel. Looking forward to a good debate tonight.
Great, thanks for being here. John will lead us off with his questions in just a few minutes, but first, the rest of our panel. Next up, we have Al Correa. Al's show, That Milford Show, it's been on Milford cable access television since long before Milford TV has been around. Al, tell us a little bit about your show.
Well, let's see, we've done 300 shows. Still having fun doing them, so we'll continue. We have one show that just talks about general areas of interest for Milford residents, a second that goes over the political views that affect Milford, and one on medical issues that the Milford Regional Medical Center wants to get out to help people. But I do want to thank John. I'm waiting for him to see if he breaks out in hives, because for the first time, John is to the right of me.
Well, I think it's actually really funny. That's the first time anyone has ever mistaken Al for John.
Oh, excellent. Well, with that, hard to move on from that. But our final panelist, Kevin Rudden. Kevin writes for the Town Crier. He also premiered a new show last year, the end of last year, here on Milford TV, 30 Minutes with the Town Crier. Kevin, how's the show been going for you since it's been on the air?
The show's great. We air every other Friday night. We have a new episode. Our 20th episode comes out on March 6th. Since January, we've been focusing on the candidates for office. But as you know, we have people reflecting all things going on in Milford, from book authors to the farmers market to town finances. We just keep going. It's an extension of the newspaper.
Great. Excellent. And that is our panel of questioners. Again, you'll be hearing from all 3 of them over the course of the night. So now let's get to our main event. The rules for tonight's debate are very simple. In a moment, I will give each candidate a chance to give a 2-minute opening statement. Before coming on air, we randomly determined who would speak first. It will be Will Kingkade, who opens up our debate in just a few moments. After that, each panelist has prepared 3 questions for the candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. There will be no rebuttals, and I'll be keeping tabs on the clock if any responses run a little bit long, but I'm sure everything's going to flow very smoothly over the course of the evening. So we will also give each candidate a chance to give a brief closing statement at the end of the night. We'll also have one final round of questions a little bit later on. If time permits, we'll give each of our members of our panel a chance to give one final question. So that's it, very simple. So we won't waste any more time. John Tian, you have the floor for your first question.
I think we want opening statements first, right?
See that? Live television. So let's get right back. Let's get back on. See, I make the rules here and then I break them. That's fine. So let's actually get to our opening statements, shall we? Will, please lead us off.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mike, for the opportunity tonight. My name's Will Kingkade. I'm obviously a candidate for selectman in Milford. I was born in Milford, raised in Milford, and have now chosen to raise my child in Milford. I love this town. All too often, of late anyway, there seems to be a lot of things that we hear in the negative light. There's always room for improvement, but Milford's a great town. I can't imagine being anywhere else. It makes me happy just to talk about it. The fact that my son's going to grow up here makes me a happy guy with that all by itself. With that said, I'd just like to talk about my experience for a moment. I started off as a town meeting member when I was 19 years old. Served 4 years as a commissioner on the Milford Housing Authority, followed by 9 years as a member and chairman of the school committee. I think that's where I obviously learned probably the majority of experience that I think is hopefully leading me to be a successful candidate for selectman. I know we'll talk a little bit about that. For the last couple of years now, I've served on the Finance Committee, which has given me the opportunity to see all the rest of town government from a financial point of view. So I hope we get a chance to go into all of that in more depth. But again, thank you for having me, and I look forward to this evening.
Excellent. Thank you, Will. Mike.
Thank you. My name is Mike Visconti. I am a candidate for selectman in the town of Milford. I am also a lifelong resident of Milford, born and raised here. That in and of itself does not qualify me to be a selectman. But I am a very dedicated person. I am very knowledgeable. I am formally educated, and as, if not more important, I have a streetwise education, which I think is very important. I am perceptive enough to look through people and organizations to understand and see when someone's trying to pull the wool over my eyes. Streetwise education is very important. I am also, which I think is very important, by nature a very conservative spender. And I believe that I will add a much needed balance to the current Board of Selectmen, being a conservative spender. It's something that we have not seen in Milford for a number of years, and I believe I will bring that back to the Board of Selectmen. I have experience with management of both people and finance. For 35, 40 years of my career, that's what I did. And I have to say, without blowing my own horn, I was very good at it. I have a wealth of experience dealing with state and federal agencies. I know the ins and outs and the intricacies of dealing with state agencies and federal agencies. It's very complicated, difficult to understand, and there's a mountain of paperwork that you have to go through. I am very familiar with that. I am a committed servant. I've spent 20 years on the Zoning Board of Appeals in Milford. For the first 16 years, and I've said this again, and people are probably tired of hearing it, for the first 16 years, I had a perfect attendance record as a Zoning Board of Appeals member. I had to take a few meetings off due to health situations. When I did come back shortly, I served my remaining 4 years with a perfect attendance record. I don't care how good a member you are, how much knowledge you bring to a board or a committee. If you don't show up, you're no good in my book.
Thank you, Mike.
I will show up. I will be there. I'm an independent thinker.
Mike, we're going to have to move on to our next round of questions, but I'm sure we'll have a chance to get to more as the night goes on.
Fair enough.
All right. So we will now officially move on to our first round of questions. And John, you have the floor.
Okay. I guess this question goes to Mike first and then Will in
Yes.
reverse of the order
Yes.
we had for opening statements. So the first question that I have is, if we were to face a cut in state aid or an increase that it's actually less than the inflation rate, how would you suggest we approach making up the shortfall?
If we face a cut in state aid, which, by the way, I believe we probably will not, our current governor has committed to not reducing state aid to municipalities. I have faith in him, and I believe he will do everything he can to see that that happens. If there is a cut, I do not consider that a shortfall. The way I look at that is that our department heads and boards will have to take that the amount of money, which I consider a fluff factor, get back to their original budget and make it work. We have highly compensated, dedicated department heads and boards. We rely on them to take the money with the as you call it, shortfalls. I don't call them shortfalls. I call them fluff falls when we got them. We should be able to operate easily without them. Budgeting is a difficult thing to do. We need to impress upon our board, our department heads and boards and committees to take that as and look at it in a positive way, as an incentive to allocate monies in the budget so that they're able to level fund and level service their particular department. I believe they can do it. Might take a little pushing, but it can be done. Along those same lines, we have to rely on, to some extent, our finance committee to stick by their guns. When they call for a 0% increase in budgets, they need to stick with a 0%. When the department heads come back to them whining that they need more money because if they don't get it, they'll lose this or they'll lose that, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. That's a lame excuse.
Thank you, Mike. That's time.
Okay.
Okay, Will, on to you.
Sure. Well, in a somewhat similar light to begin with, I think that as a selectman, it should be through the town administrator, through to the department heads, and then from the department heads going right down through each one of their departments, because they're the ones that are doing this every day. They're the professionals. They're the ones dealing with the subject matter as well as how it affects our customers. And I think sometimes in government that gets lost, that the taxpayers, the people that we are servicing, they're our customers. So it's not just looking at something and saying, okay, well, if we're cut $1 million, we'll just cut the fluff and we'll move on. It's more of what is the effect on our customers? Because people do expect services for what they pay for. I believe it was in '04 when Milford saw a rather sizable cut in local aid. And I know as a member of the school committee, we had to make some drastic cuts. It does give you the opportunity to drill down and see where there are more efficiencies you can get and things potentially you can package to save money any way you can. I mean, we started pre-buying paper and toiletries and anything that we could to start saving more money. Pink slips did go out, but we worked closely with the finance committee, and our local receipts ended up supporting most of the difference. There was still some cuts that hurt, but you have to start with the department heads, work them through, have them present, come back through the finance committee to the Board of Selectmen, and eventually to town meeting. And Milford's done a great job of living within their budget, whatever that budget presents at the time.
Great, thank you. John, on to your second question.
Okay, second question. This one would go to Will first and then Mike. Taxing to the levy limit. You for that or are you against that?
Well, I guess currently and I hope to remain that way, that I am against borrowing to the levy limit because we haven't had to in quite a few years now, and we've actually stopped government from growing in the town of Milford by around $12 million. We've also, with that, that means that taxpayers have actually had to pay less in taxes. We kind of do the budget borrowing up to the levy limit and then put money back towards that rate. It's been somewhere between $1 million and some years $1.8 million that we've put back to the taxpayers. And to be honest with you, I think that's a sign of, in addition to fiscal responsibility, it's also a sign of respect, again, to our customers, to the people that we serve. Because if we don't need to tax them to a maximum limit, we shouldn't just because we can. And I think that has been a tradition pretty long standing now that I certainly hope to continue with. And I think that kind of piggybacks on your last question, which is we need to live within the budget that we have, but it's very much a positive to live within the budget you can do with. Not do without, but do with. Because when we can tax people and then add back $1.8 million to the tax limit, to the tax rate, excuse me, we're not going without anything. We do really wonderful things here in town, and people pay for them. But we have a lot of services and everything that our customers get, and we don't tax to the levy limit.
Okay.
All right, Mike?
Taxing to the levy limit. I believe there is no way that we need to tax to the levy limit. Let's keep in mind that I believe there's a misunderstanding out there as to what Prop 2.5 is all about. It was not, Proposition 2.5 was not an invitation to communities to tax to 2.5. It was designed as a fail-safe so that you would not go over the 2.5%. People think that, oh, we got to add 2.5, let's go for it. I believe we should not. There is no reason for it. How can we ask our seniors and our veterans, who in a lot of cases are on a fixed income, a Social Security check, in a lot of cases less than $1,000 a month? How can we ask them to finance these tax hikes if we go to the levy limit? Also, there's a misunderstanding with respect to taxes and how and why we need to even do that. There is no reason to increase taxes and spend money just because we have it. This idea of giving $1.8 million to the taxpayers. We gave the taxpayers nothing except their own money back, which we never should have taken from them. The idea of our taxes not having gone up in the last few years, I don't subscribe to that. I try not to make categorical, arbitrary statements. Let's look at some facts. I deal with facts. Let's look at some facts. In the 10 years following 2003, the average residential tax bill in Milford, now not the tax rate. The tax rate means nothing as far as I'm concerned. It's a simple calculation based on levy and assessed value. Means nothing. What you actually take out of the taxpayer's pocket, the dollars, that means something to me.
Thank you, Mike.
That's
time. We'll move on to the final question for John's portion of the debate, and this will go to you first, Mike.
So, Mike, if we were to face the need for additional revenues, what would you suggest as revenue enhancement areas?
You know, revenue enhancement is a sophisticated work for more taxes. I don't believe we need any revenue enhancements at all if we face any cutbacks from the state. As I said earlier, if that happens, then we go to our boards and our department heads and we say, look, you don't have that money. You should never have had that money. Work with it. Make it work. You're well compensated. Do your job. Make it work. No more taxes. I will not support any increase in taxes.
Great. Thank you. All right. Will, on to you.
I agree that revenue enhancements either is taxes or fees. I feel very strongly that especially because I experienced some of those cuts in state aid through Chapter 70 and Chapter 90, that you do have to live within your budget. Again, when Milford has been in the fortunate position where we've been able to not make up the difference at 100%, but we've come very close. I think that we're in very decent fiscal shape, and that's not to say that's an excuse to spend frivolously or anything else, but to have the savings and the money put away that we have and that we've worked for so long. I mean, that's what that's designed for. So you hope to weather a storm if need be. That may not be how our surrounding towns have dealt with it, but it's very simple, I think, to say that, you know, we're not going to support more taxes, but I think the reality is, through inflation, things grow. If you get more aid from the state, your government locally tends to grow. That doesn't mean you have to advocate for it or support that. But as for revenue enhancements, I would say you have to live within your own budget. We've done it. We've weathered storms before. We're going to weather storms ahead. One thing, a comment earlier, I also don't think that this year coming up and probably the next year, we're going to see cuts to local aid. Regardless of how you feel about the current administration, they were both former town officials. They were both former selectmen, and I think that that's why we're seeing support given to our municipalities, regardless of how they may make up their differences at the state level. I don't believe the towns are going to pay for that.
All right, thank you very much, Will. And that concludes our first portion of the debate. We'll move on now to our second round of questioning, which will come from Al Correa. And this question will go to Will Kingkade first.
Willie, as a town, what do you see are our 3 biggest challenges, and how would you address them?
Sure. I think the first #1 issue, even though we're in very good fiscal shape, is always the budget, because it's a challenge every year. I think the second challenge right now is, the effects of illegal immigration or immigration as a whole on our school system. And the third right now is, I'm kind of torn between, and it's more of a kind of inside baseball being on the finance committee, whether it's what to do with Middle School East, as well as the IT infrastructure, and I'm kind of torn on that. But the first one being the budget. Again, not to be repetitive, but that is a process that we start from scratch every year. And the reason I think that we start it the way we do and go through the process and have everyone come forward and go before their boards, go through the subcommittees on the FinCom, and eventually get to town meeting, is because it gives each one of those department heads and those departments as a whole to examine their entire budget. And I don't know how other towns do it, but I know how we do it. And I know it's been successful, and I know that that needs to keep continuing. I think a budget is, I know I'm going to use up a lot of my time here, but the budget can get away from someone in a very short period of time. So I just want to say that as a selectman, I will stay on that as much as I did while I was on the finance committee and on the school committee. The second, immigration on our school system. The reason I bring that up is because a lot of children showed up with their parents on the first day of school as a surprise. They didn't register at the family center, they didn't know the process, and all of a sudden, throughout the school district, we had 30-some-odd kids show up. That's more than a classroom full of kids to show up on the first day of school. If we knew about it beforehand, we could have planned a little better, or the school department certainly could have. I can address, hopefully, my other issues later on.
Thank you, Will. The question now goes to you, Mr. Visconti.
Well, as you might expect, budget was on top of my list also, and I think I've said a lot about the budget when speaking to the previous question. But I will finish. The budget has to be kept in check. As a matter of fact, I will go as far as to say, if we do get the state aid, we should still inspire our department heads to go back and budget, assuming there is no aid, and hold that budget. Forget the aid. Rein in your spending. Budget without the state aid dollar amount. It can be done. It can be done if you be a little creative on where you place the money you want to spend. In past years, I know what's been happening. We have the money, so we look for areas to spend it in. And the excuse is, oh, well, we have the money, so as long as we have it, let's spend it. I don't buy that. You don't spend money just because you have it. Someday you may not have it. Once again, it goes back to my conservatism in terms of spending. I would inspire, strongly inspire, if I am elected, the Finance Committee to hold their request, I'll call it a request, I would like to call it a demand, to the department heads to come back with a level-funded, level-serviced budget. It can be done. In the past, and on town meeting floor, I have gone as far as to volunteer my time free of charge to any department who would like some assistance in formulating a level-funded, level-service budget. And that still stands. I will still do that. I'm willing to help out anybody that asks for it. Keep in mind, and getting back to the taxes again, which is a direct reflection of the budget, and I'll just finish up where I left off.
Just a few more seconds, Mike.
Okay, that'll take me 2 seconds. The idea that our taxes have not gone up in the past few years is not a solid, valid statement. In the 10 years following 2003, our taxes, our average residential tax bill has increased 50%. For the same period of time, inflation has increased only 30%. So already, our residential taxpayers are already behind the 8 ball.
Thank you.
Now,
We're going to have to move on.
okay.
Mike,
Yes.
3 priority projects in Milford. What would you think we should look at as the 3 biggest projects, and how would you address them, and when?
3 projects that I think we should probably take a look at. Well, we're already are being looked at. I think we should continue to look at these aggressively. And in no particular order, okay, we have the Godfrey Brook situation. We need to continue to get that brook and stream fixed. The poor people that live along that brook have suffered for years. I can remember when I was a kid, my dad taking me down there during heavy storms down off of Water Street and down in that area where the brook crosses, and having to stop because we could not go through because of the flood down there. It has not gotten any better over the years. Yeah, a little bit of work has been done, and I guess we can credit the Highway Department and the Highway Surveyor, Mr. Christofouli, for his time and effort that he put into fixing up some of those walls. We need to get it fixed once and for all. Once again, in no particular order. That is something we need to continue to do. The bypass road, still looming, talking about it for years. I believe now we may be waiting for some funding to get that back on track again. We need to continue with that. It's a very important, integral part of this community and its ability to move forward. It will help not only the taxpayers of Milford, the residential taxpayers, it'll help the businesses along Main Street. They should not be afraid that they will lose customers because everybody will take the bypass road. On the contrary, because there is a bypass road, when there is, it'll reroute a lot of the traffic around Main Street so that the people who would like to go to Main Street to buy things from their local entrepreneurs will be able to drive down Main Street in less than an hour and shop around. The bypass road is a win-win situation for this town. Look what it did for Marlborough. Look what it did for Hudson. We cannot go wrong with the bypass road. We should pursue that aggressively.
All right, Mike, unfortunately, we're at time, so we'll move on to Will.
Thank you, Tim. I think looking ahead, well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention with the Woodland School. Granted, we're moving forward, hopefully breaking ground in just a couple of weeks, but that is a project that some of us have worked on for over a decade. And as I mean school committee members, FinCom members, boards of selectmen, town meeting after town meeting over the last few years. It's a huge investment. It's going to cost, obviously, almost $60 million between the state and local receipts. But it's something that we've been waiting for a very long time. So I always want to talk about that when projects come up, because it's been a long time coming. Money has been set aside so that we could take a very conservative approach to building a school that's well overdue. Second, I would say that well, second and third is Godfrey Brook as well as IT. Right now, Godfrey Brook has made it into the state environmental bond bill, I think for $4.3 million. It's on the governor's desk. Hopefully he's going to support that. I know our legislators are working on that as well, because that alone would be a huge, huge cost for the town of Milford, but one that has to be dealt with. Whether it comes through on the bond bill or the town of Milford has to pay for it, it has to get fixed. Those are people's homes. It runs under streets across town. We owe that to our citizens that are also living on that brook and paying their taxes as well. IT in town is again, it's inside baseball, but it's a huge, huge issue right now. We need to make a sizable investment. And again, we're trying to stay ahead of it best we can. When you're dealing with all these different fiefdoms in town, you know, you're dealing with the school department, town hall, all the boards that have autonomy over their departments and their staff. So there's a lot of conversations going on, but we're going to have to make a sizable investment. Not all at once. It can probably be staged or phased in, but it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if we don't get ahead of it, truly get ahead of it, then when the servers crash at the school and there's not communication between the school department and town hall, and people aren't getting paid, and everything, our phone systems, everything runs over the internet, we need new servers, we need everything, and it's really a huge, huge issue.
Thank you, Will. All right. Final question from Al.
Words I don't like to use, but I have to ask. I guess I start with you, Willie. Are there instances when you believe you would support a 2.5 override, or that other word, debt exclusion?
Maybe if I was running for selectman in some other town, because I hear other towns and municipalities do this quite often. We've never done it. I certainly wouldn't support it. Again, it goes back to living within your own budget. And what makes it, I guess, somewhat easy to talk about and to have that opinion so strongly is, it goes back to our very first comments earlier tonight. We have millions in reserves. We do not tax to the levy limit of 2.5%. So why, in God's name, would we ever talk about a 2.5 override or a debt exclusion? So I hope that was clear enough. No.
Great. Thank you, Will. Mike.
I could not and would not support a 2.5 override. I believe that we don't need one now, and if we continue the way we're going, we will not need one. Now, if somebody put a gun to my head and said, look, it's either a 2.5 override or a debt exclusion, what's it going to be? I believe that I would go with a debt exclusion. My understanding is that a 2.5 override, that amount of money is then added or figured into your base for the following year to calculate your 2.5%, whereas a debt exclusion is not. So the following year, your base would start back where you were before the debt exclusion. So once again, I cannot support it, but if someone put a gun to my head, I would have to go with debt exclusion.
All right.
No need for either of them, though.
Great. Thank you. And that concludes Al's line of questioning. We'll move on now to our third portion of our debate, moving right along here at a good speed. So Kevin.
Okay, I believe this goes to Mr. Visconti first.
Yes.
And then Mr. Kingkade. Mike, what are the largest areas we face in immigration, and how would you address them?
Okay, immigration is a serious, serious problem in our town. There are very few towns in the Commonwealth that have this situation to the extent that we have it. There's probably a handful of towns that are in the same situation that we are in with illegal immigrants. We have to do something to mitigate this problem. It's burdening the town financially, it's burdening the school systems, and more importantly than either of those two, it's jeopardizing the safety of our residents here. And I don't think I have to get into the detail of how it has already jeopardized the safety of our residents here. Something has to be done, and it has to be done now. If I am elected, I will work hard to convince my fellow board members that we should form a committee. And I know every time you turn around, someone's forming a committee. But I believe that of all the committees that could be formed, this is one of the, if not the, most important committee that we can form. And that would be an ad hoc committee to look into ways that we can legally make Milford unattractive to illegal immigration. Legally. And I know people will say, oh, well, it's a federal issue, it's a state issue, there's nothing we can do. How do we know there's nothing we can do? Let's form the committee, let's get them out there working, see if there's ways. If the committee comes back to the board and says, look, we've looked at every single possible avenue to discourage illegal immigrants legally from coming to Milford, and we can't, and there are none, then fine, so be it. But we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the residents of this town, we owe it to our next generation to try. That just because people say there's nothing we can do, I say we try, and we try hard, and I will push for that.
Great. Thank you, Mike.
Okay, Will, your thoughts?
Yes. I think it's pretty simple why we have an immigration problem. And I know Milford is one of 7 cities and towns across the Commonwealth that have a larger issue and feel the larger effects of the population compared to the rest of the cities and towns. And it's very simple. We have the housing. We've always had the housing. We're a former mill town. People have been coming here, legally or illegally, because we have the housing. One family comes, they tell their family, it grows, it grows, it grows. How you deal with the housing problems, not housing in general, but the housing problems, and I've said this, and I probably sound like a broken record, you have to look at the property owners. We have a task force in town. The Board of Health, the Milford Board of Health made national news setting standards that no other town in the country set. We need to, as a Board of Selectmen member and as a board as a whole, probably need to make it even more of a priority to work with the Board of Health, who are on their own in some of these enforcements that they control. Our building commissioner and the inspection department, they're on their own. Though they work well together through a task force, that's not their only job. So again, I think we need to take a look. I don't know if we necessarily need to form a committee, but I think we have to at least see how we can address multiple families still living in apartments. After the inspections are done, certificates of occupancy are issued, we're hearing about the same landlords 3 months later, building up, having multiple families in a home. I know through my friends and family at the school system, there are still multiple families that are sleeping in shifts. We also have to look at what resources we're putting towards those issues, because we can't expect a half a person or one person in these departments to be able to handle all of the housing issues in the town of Milford. It's the housing.
Thank you.
Kevin,
Okay,
question?
the next question, would go to you first, Will.
Sure.
What steps would you make to make Main Street more hospitable to shoppers?
You know, Kevin, that's probably the toughest question, because, you know, you talk to so many people and they talk about years ago, and I remember going to the women's store in Alpens with my mother and getting my Levi's at the Tiger Den and my sneakers across the street and all of that, and people who are even older remember even more of a thriving Main Street. But as malls came in and developments built and plazas built, people moved off of Main Street for parking, for this, for that, and who moves in? The people who can now want to start businesses that most of their transportation is walking on Main Street, having one-car families, and those are our immigrants. So that's why when you go down Main Street nowadays, you have more immigrant businesses than you do local. But also look at the Spallones. I mean, they still have a thriving business there. They're doing a great job. Most of our banks, 89 Main, we have a lot to offer. How you attract people back? Well, to be honest with you, maybe through tax incentives. I think if someone wanted to open a new restaurant in town, or a pub, or some other business that I'm not thinking of offhand right now, maybe those are the people. We seem to give tips to these large box stores that come to Milford. But what about mom and pop that want to start a business that they've been thinking of, but have enough saved to go down, but first, last month, the rent, the insurance. I mean, it takes an awful lot of money and capital to open a business in Massachusetts. Maybe we start looking at what small businesses we can help, because in order to rejuvenate Main Street, it may be worth putting up a couple of months' rent or helping them on the taxes to get them there. But you have to make it attractive for people to want to be on Main Street, because it's just as easy to jump in your car and drive 5 minutes down the road to a plaza where there's 2,000 parking spaces.
Okay. Mike, your thoughts on downtown?
I do. Well, let's go back to the previous question. Bypass Road. One of the issues with downtown and businesses is that accessibility is an issue. bypass road. We need to be able to allow people to get to Main Street, park there, walk around, feel safe walking around, and go in and out of stores. Now, other towns do it, we can do it. We need to make it accessible. If we make it accessible, the people will come. People are not going to go, people are going to take the path of last resistance. And that is usually, at this point in time, not include Main Street, Milford.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And
Okay, next question goes back to you, Mike. Right now, we have Harold Rhodes, the chairman of the Commission on Disability, at the Selectmen's request, is looking at the cost of bringing local bus transportation within the town of Milford to Milford. Would you support that, Mike?
To a degree. Here's the issue I have with that. The feedback I'm getting from the residents is not necessarily the need for transportation from Milford to other towns, Framingham included. The feedback I'm getting from people is that they need, they don't want, how are they going to get from their home to the bus stop? Now, the bus is not going to, would not stop at everybody's house. The people I talk with need transportation from their house. Okay, I have a doctor's appointment at the Milford Regional. What am I going to do? Walk from the Heights down to the Sacred Heart Church parking lot to pick up a bus? To go where? No, I have an appointment at the hospital at 2 o'clock. I need a ride from my house. I can't get to a bus stop. So I would not support, at least now, expenditure of any amount of money to set up bus transportation from Milford to surrounding towns. We have a bus already that leaves Milford every morning and goes to Framingham and comes back every night at 4:30. I don't hold me to the exact time. Late afternoon. And from Framingham, they could get on a bus or a train to go pretty much anywhere in the state. So that already exists. Why spend money on something additional when it already exists in the town? Let's figure out how we can make it more convenient for our seniors who have medical issues that need to get to the hospital for an appointment. Let's figure that out. How can we make it easier for them to do that?
Okay.
Certainly, it's not walking from their house 2 miles to a bus stop.
great.
So to that extent, I would not support that.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, I want to repeat the question
Please.
because my question was specifically within the town of Milford, not going from Milford to other places.
Okay. I spoke to Harold Rhodes probably maybe three or 4 weeks ago about this very issue. I have an interest in transportation. I work for the MBTA. I think.
I don't know if I'd brag about that right now.
No. It's
Sorry about that.
No. It's been a tough couple of months, even as a commuter. I think it's going to take a couple of years to get our arms and hands and everything around transportation, real fixed routes within the town of Milford. As our population gets older, I think it's something that we should continue to pay attention to, and it may end up being more of a priority than it is right now, even though to many it is a priority. And Mike touched on a couple of things. A lot of people are talking about how they get to their doctor's appointments. How do they get to the senior center to get the bus from there or the van? So I think at the very least, the next Board of Selectmen needs to look at additional van service from the senior center, which is picking people up and taking them the best they can on a scheduled basis. I think that we need to, we partner with Milford Medical Center, Milford Regional Medical Center on a number of things. I think as they're expanding as much as they are, we should also be looking to them for transportation to see if that's something we can partner with. Because again, sometimes the public doesn't always do it the right way. Public and private partnerships tend to be successful. I think also We have the Geriatric Authority in Milford. We have the Blair House. We have Cornerstone. We have Sunbridge. We have a number of assisted living facilities that have vans. Is there a way we could partner with them? And I don't know, but I certainly wouldn't mind picking up the phone and finding out, having them come to a committee meeting or a Board of Selectmen meeting, and seeing as corporate partners in town and being a good corporate neighbor, is there a way that we could partner? I mean, what's the worst that could happen? They say they can't. How else can we help? But the dialogue has to start, and that's just one example. But things come out of conversation, and I think that's where, for the immediate future, we could really look at.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, Kevin. So that concludes our initial 3 rounds of questioning. We've still got time to spare, so we'll go ahead and we'll do one additional question from each of the members of our panel. We'll go back around to you, John.
Okay, thank you. As chairperson of Milford's Renewable Energy Advisory Committee, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask a question about renewable energy. We recently, a couple of years ago, actually signed a contract with a solar farm in Northbridge. A company called DG Clean Power put it together, and we got a pretty good deal out of it. It was going to save the taxpayers some money on our electricity rates and provide quite a bit of electricity to the town from solar power. Would you support solar power projects like that going forward? We're, on the Renewable Energy Committee, we're still looking at ways to get more of our power from situations like that. I believe it goes to Mike first.
I am a big fan of green energy. As a matter of fact, you may recall that I volunteered for the Renewable Energy Committee. For whatever reason, the current board felt that I did not have the ability to serve on that committee, and I did not get the appointment to that committee. But I volunteered for that committee. I would volunteer again. It's very important. As a matter of fact, one of the things I think we should do above and beyond that is to look into Milford achieving green community status. There are a number of grants that would become available to Milford if we achieved green community status. And it's not that difficult to do. There is a step-by-step procedure that you go through. Other towns have done it, and they are now reaping the benefits of the funds that Milford should be partaking in, but we are not. I would definitely look into that and push for that.
Mike, thank you. Will?
Great. John, I think this, especially at this day and age, regardless of, we were joking earlier about the political spectrum and where people are, and I mean, again, I think even this is something that's crossing generations, because specifically to solar power, I mean, quite honestly, why not? It's unobtrusive. The sun is there. I think, I don't mean to oversimplify it, but just look at our town-owned buildings. Why we still have so many flat roofs in New England, I have no idea. But why not take advantage of that? Why aren't our schools having solar panels on them? Even if we have to, again, do something else that's phased in. On the FinCom, we have a habit of phasing things in. Why? Because it's affordable. And we can put away enough each year to have certain projects done over time. The sun isn't going anywhere. Solar energy, I don't think, is going anywhere. If anything, we're watching expand. Speaking of commuting, I see solar farms on the Worcester line going through all the way into Boston, where it used to just be plotted woods of land. There's a little carved out, and it's a great use of space. But I would like to take a look at each one of our buildings, and this is something on your committee that you may have already done, and I'm preaching to the choir. But I know that each one of our town-owned buildings certainly don't have solar panels on them, and we're not harnessing all of that energy. So that's something I would personally like to learn more about, and quite honestly challenge our department heads to go and find out what it would take to see what we can do about expanding our solar power right here in Milford.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Al, question goes to you.
I was going to ask about IT, but I'm hearing both of you talk at a very high, 30,000-foot level. I want to put you on the spot. I hear control costs, something near and dear to my heart. We've got a number of contracts coming up. Mm-hmm. Years ago, we had to ask our teachers to take a zero.
Yes.
To make the budget. These contracts are coming up. Mm-hmm. What would you advise, and how would you ask the negotiators to approach school committee or school contract's probably the biggest one coming up. What would you ask them to do?
Sure. When I was on the school committee, and I imagine they're still doing this, we did what's called collaborative bargaining. I didn't take part in collective bargaining, and if I'm on the Board of Selectmen, I don't want to take part in collective bargaining either. What we did was collaborative bargaining. That means you're not in separate rooms, having someone go back and forth, relaying a message. You're actually in the same room with a third-party moderator that's forcing you to listen to each one of your views. It's a very interesting process, and it was very successful while I was on the board. I think what I would tell the negotiators is, first, and again, this may sound cliche-ish, it's not. As management, we need to listen. It doesn't cost us anything to hear what our employees, who we should all hold in high regard, because most of them by far are doing a good job. And if they're not doing a good job, it's the department heads that should be dealing with that. But I'm proud of our teachers, our firemen, our policemen, our custodians, everyone that makes this whole wheel of Milford turn. And the one thing that we can do is listen. That's when you get the flipboard on the easel and you write down all the issues you want to discuss. And this might be going on now. I won't know for sure unless I get elected to the Board of Selectmen. But I think collaborative bargaining is the way to go. I think maybe a Board of Selectmen representing the board is involved in some of, especially the larger contracts. School committee members bargain with the teachers directly. I'd like to know if there's a Board of Selectmen sitting and negotiating in the room with our first responders and everyone else, the AFSCME or the custodians or at least the fire department and police department, the other two big organizations. But I honestly think listening, seeing what else, because there's sometimes so many other things that you can get to, that if you can address some other issues, underlying issues that are bothering the labor force, sometimes that 0 to 3% you can get on the lower level if you address so many of the other issues.
Thank you, Will. Mike?
Thank you. My message to negotiators, stand firm. 0% increase, plain and simple. Consider this, a 1% concession on the school system salaries amounts to a $250,000 savings. The school system would have an extra $250,000 to spend on SPED, to spend on ELL. Don't come crying when you're giving out excessive raises. 3 years ago, raises in the amount of 10% were handed out to 3 of the highest paid municipal employees in this town. In that same period of time, going back to our seniors and our veterans, by the way, we can talk about helping our seniors, we can talk about looking out for them, which we've been doing for years, but talk is cheap. We need to do something. We need to do something to help them out. And you don't help them out by giving out 10% raises to the 3 highest paid municipal employees in this town and then asking them to fund it. That is not how you help your seniors, and I will not do that. I will not do that. I will never do that. For that same period of time, our seniors, I hate to be redundant, but our seniors on Social Security received a whopping increase in their pay to the tune of 0%. Over the last 5 years, look at the raises they received. Nothing higher than 1.5%. How can you ask them to fund these excessive raises that are handed out? I cannot. I will not. I will look out for them like I look out for myself.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. Kevin?
Okay, gentlemen, a few minutes ago I asked you about illegal immigration. I want to flip that question around. Start with you, Mike. What would you do to make the legal immigrants feel more welcomed in Milford?
It's important to note that sometimes people cannot make the distinction between legal and illegal immigration. I welcome all legal immigrants. I can't tell you the number of times that people come up to me and tell me how grateful they are that my dad walked them through the process of legalization when they came to this country. This is many years ago. It was difficult for them. My dad helped them along, and they are forever grateful. Those are the people that we need to keep here. And how we do that, we need to make the clear distinction between legal and illegal. And we need to make them feel as welcome as we can. You know, exactly how we go about doing that, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to think about that for a little bit of time before I just spit something out. But we certainly do. And I welcome immigrants from all parts of the planet. Come on down, as they say. Come on down. Do it the right way, and I'll give you the shirt off my back. But do it the right way.
Okay. All right.
Will,
Thank
your
you.
thoughts?
Well, I have a lot to say. I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where we can identify the difference between illegal immigrants and legal immigrants. I'm not sure how you would do that, and I'm not sure I'd want to be part of that process. However, I think people in Milford that come here legally, honestly, as well as those who come here illegally, are treated very well. I think at a very personal level, people are upset by illegal immigration as a whole because it doesn't seem to be being dealt with at all. So it does fall on the municipalities and the localities that are affected by it. And people see what it does to their school system. Again, not that 30 children were added to the Milford Public Schools, but that 30 children that showed up on the first day of school. And we didn't have time to plan for an additional classroom or plan at all. Those are the effects that people get upset with. I think Milford has always been a welcoming town to immigrants. I mean, going back to whether it's Portuguese, Irish, Italian, I mean, we have synagogues in Milford that are over 100 years old. We have literally welcomed everyone. And I go back to how I started. That's one of the things that make this town great. So how do you make legal immigrants feel more welcomed? I think they are. And I think they feel they are. Because again, they come here, but why do people stay? My father brought my mother here 45 years ago and promised she was only going to be here 6 weeks. I'm 39 years old and it's 45 years later. People stay because this town is so special. Because you make a friend in kindergarten and they never leave you. And as you go off, when you grow up in Milford and you go off and you go to college and you meet other people, you go to Boston every day and work with a very diverse group of people, you realize that people don't have what I have. Being a mayor at Prospect Heights Association, some of those guys have literally known each other for 80 years. That is a Milford thing. This is a great town. Legally or illegally, I can't blame anyone for coming here. But I think one thing that you can do, and I should have mentioned this earlier, was a census, a real census, a door-to-door census, so that we can actually pay people $10 an hour, get them to knock on doors, and find out who's actually living in Milford. Because our population is not 23 or 24,000. I know I went over my time. I apologize, Kevin.
That's okay. Thank you
Sorry,
very much. No, that's all right. We are just down to our last 60 seconds, so in an effort to give all three of our panelists a chance to give one extra question, we'll forego official closing statements, so we'll just leave the comments right there. So again, Mike Visconti, Will Kingkade, I want to thank you both very much for joining us on the debate this evening.
Thank you for having me. Us, actually.
I also want to thank our panel of questioners. Again, John Tian, Al Correa, Kevin Rudden. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
Anytime you can put John on my right, I'm happy to be here.
And I really belong in the center.
And we also want to thank all of the viewers at home for tuning into this debate as well. So again, election night, April 7th, we hope everyone participates. And from all of us here at Milford TV, I'm Tim Coet. So long, everybody.
Tonight on Talk Show with